Daniel Day. I'm Chief Marketing Officer here at Luciq. I want to say good morning to everyone. We're kicking off mobile observability. It's all about time and latency. I wanted to start off with a bit of a reality check. So here we are, already 4 months into 2026. I can't believe how fast time is passing by. But now we know that mobile apps aren't just a part of your business and our business. They actually are your business. And as our reliance on mobile apps has grown, our patience with them has seemed to vanish completely. And we've actually moved into an era where app reliability is just the baseline for trust. And anything less than reliability results in an immediate exit from the app. And so today I'm joined by our Chief Product Officer, Kenny. I see you, Kenny.
Yeah.
Kenny, we're moving and seeing this transition from traditional reactive monitoring, which has clearly hit a ceiling, towards agentic AI, agentic observability, and agentic workflows. I'd love to talk to you about why good enough is no longer the standard. And if you could, I'll give you the floor for a quick introduction to our audience.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, my name is Kenny Johnston. I am the Chief Product Officer here at Lucic. I've been with the company for about 4 years. We are 100% focused on mobile developers, and as a former developer myself, um, I really like the title of It's About Time, not just because of the latency thing, but because I do feel like mobile is having its moment. Certainly post-COVID, users' use of mobile and expectations of what they can do on their mobile phones has increased. Um, and that has only accelerated over the past 6 years since then. And what that has meant is that I think mobile engineering and mobile software development is now starting to shine as a critical component of businesses achieving their goals. Many businesses are 100% reliant on their mobile apps for not just revenue, but their brand experience and the messaging that they're sending to their customers and their users. So that has meant a lot more focus on mobile, and it's also meant a kind of escalating set of expectations of what it means to be a great mobile app. No longer is it just about stability, it's also about performance, non-technical aspects of quality, and even taste. And so I think mobile developers are now increasing in importance amongst organizations. And that's why, I think we're here to talk about how uh, we not just need a mental shift in how important mobile apps are and mobile development is, but in the tools that we provide to our mobile development teams.
Yeah, that makes sense. Things have been changing rapidly in the adoption of mobile applications as like the primary vehicle for interactions with brands is at an all-time high. And so how we measure and monitor that has changed completely. And so let's jump in. It says Kenny, we're seeing that teams all the time who have plenty of alerts, yet they're still losing users to single crash uninstalls. What is this action gap? The time between bug happening and the fix going live? Why is this gap still so wide?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think a part of it we should all admit to ourselves. I think of that movie, There's Something About Mary. There's something about mobile that has meant our engineering efforts have not been organized around find a problem, fix a problem. Many of you work in organizations that have both a web experience for your users and a mobile experience. And I'm sure you recognize that the web teams have a much faster cycle time from, hey, we spotted this issue to it's now fixed and our users are experiencing it. The obvious answer for us as mobile practitioners is, well, we have a gated store experience. That means we can't just immediately update our app. Um, But I think that has actually led to a little bit of complacency from mobile development teams because we just fall back into the standard, oh, we'll put it on the backlog and get to it at the next release. We have to start shifting that. And there are actually tools that are out there today that allow for a much more rapid cycle from issue identified to shipped and users experiencing it, even for mobile. So I think the first thing is just, I think we have to shift our mentality to that's not possible, so we have to go slower, and there has to be at a minimum, let's say, week-long gap between issue identified and fix. To know there are plenty of ways that we can control and adjust users' experiences without going through the store. The second one is just there is a lot of latency in the identification of an issue. And so by that, I mean, oftentimes as mobile teams, we will know that there is a fire happening. Either there is a degradation in a key user flow, or there's a crash that's preventing users from accomplishing a task, or when some peak load is happening on your app, there's degradation across the app. We can know that, but the hard part is really about going from that happening to us knowing how to fix it. And I think that's the manual work that happens today where we might get alerted, as you said, like we're alerted of it, but it's really hard to go through uh, the haystack to find the needle in this case.
Mm,
For mobile in particular, you're talking about heterogeneous devices across the whole often planet, and you're trying to look for logs that you oftentimes don't have access to because you're only able to log on the back end, what might be happening on that device. There's a lot of guesswork in the triage and discovery process. I do think that with the age of LLMs that can, we generally think of LLMs as creators of things. They're also great analyzers of data. They can help us spot not just that an issue happened, but what the root cause might be and how we might fix it a lot quicker. And actually, they're especially good in this mobile world because there is so much data that it's very, very difficult for a human to process, but we can, using LLMs or just other machine learning techniques, spot patterns that we couldn't have spotted before. So I really think it comes down to one, we need to make sure that the way we solve this action gap is going to be by adjusting our attitude and not accepting that the action gap has to exist, making sure that we have a process for um, manually identifying or for identifying that there's an issue, and then utilizing state-of-the-art tools for figuring out the resolution to that issue as quickly as possible.
yeah, that makes sense. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. Is this AI and LLM proliferation has created all of this additional kind of overhead with the code. But like you said, it's also a great tool for triaging and understanding. But these AI tools and LLMs, without the actual context and the data, is just kind of guessing at what the answer is. Can you tell us more, dive like a little bit deeper into how Luciq's engine or platform actually uses this context to better understand the impact of these technical failures within mobile applications?
Yeah. I think that the word context is really important here because there is this convergence of, what we might have typically considered observability data and other analytics data. They're all actually becoming more and more useful. And so I tend to think of this as there's like a quantitative set of information and a qualitative set of information. And on both sides of quantitative and qualitative, there are both technical and like non-technical experiential data points. So let me give you some examples. In a quantitative technical realm, we would be talking about things like crashes. Those are known things that happen. They're a specific set of technical information that's really about the core of quality, the reliability of that app. On a quantitative but non-technical, it's more about like the user's experience and the flow, things that are more traditionally in the product analytics bucket. In the qualitative technical component, it might be like a bug report. This app is not doing what I expect it to do. Somebody please help me. In the qualitative but non-technical, it might be something like a minor UI issue that's not really a bug, but it's an annoyance to a user. Like sometimes it can be something as simple as like the fonts don't match, or there's some breakage out of a container. These are things that are a little bit more experiential, that you're not blocking the user, but they're the types of kind of paper cuts that add up to a negative experience. Actually, when you think about all of those are all critically important to you improving your app, to achieving the business outcomes of your app. So it's really less about what kind of logs do you collect, and how much fidelity do we get from the crash data. It's really about this context of the whole picture. And so that whole picture includes, you know, we don't have this yet, but like you can imagine if you also knew, hey, while this was happening to a user, were they screaming at their phone, which coincidentally enough is something that we know two-thirds of human beings do at some point during the year. Um, that's the kind of qualitative context that can help you uh, not just solve a specific issue, but also make sure you're solving the right issues. So when we talk about context, we collect everything that's happening on the device, the taps, the interactions, the logs. As a product, we send those with masking to make sure we're not collecting any personalized information to an engine that can then analyze those, not just for like, let's group the right crashes together and let's combine different bug reports so that they're accurate, but also within each issue, so within each crash, we can help spot the patterns by having full context of the reproduction steps that happened before that crash, the most common ones, the most common stack trace versions, things like that. Um, that's all great. It helps you go from, hey, there is an issue that can be either qualitative or quantitative, and we know how to fix it because we have more context about what was happening, not just on that one instance, but across many instances of that issue. I think the more compelling thing to me is that it's not just about resolving; it's also about the triage part.
Mm.
Um, because that context is really great. It helps us solve individual issues, but we're engineers. We know that like at any given time, there's hundreds of issues that we could be working on. What's difficult is knowing which one is the most important one. And so I'll give you an example. We
Sure.
had a customer who was onboarding to our product. Their typical workflow was like, if we have a crash, the first thing we work on is fixing crashes. It's a very common workflow with mobile engineering teams. Your focus is first on stability. What they didn't realize, and Luciq helped them realize, was actually that crash was happening had low occurrence counts, which is fine. I think most teams can recognize low occurrence counts, but it was also happening. Their occurrences were also happening in a place that the was not a like high value experience for their users. It wasn't in the main checkout flow for the app. Uh, and then they compared, and Lucic helped identify that actually an improvement in a screen loading time for this critical page on that main checkout was going to be more impactful to the app's outcomes than fixing that crash. And it's that kind of context that's really important. Understanding what are the critical flows, understanding where uh, user users tend to spend their time on your app, and then applying the logic of what's the most impactful to our users to decide what is the most important issue to work on. Because again, there's no shortage of issues. I just described that there's qualitative,
Love
quantitative,
to
technical,
do.
non-technical. There's no shortage. The real question is, how do we decide what's the most important thing? And we're all users of LLMs. Most important thing, not just for you and your time, but also for your tokens. You're spending dollars on asking an LLM to solve this issue. Is it the most important one? Is increasingly becoming the best question to ask.
Let's Yeah, that makes sense. You need to optimize your time and the system, and also what's going to have like the greatest impact for your users, because there's no shortage of things that you could be doing with your time, but you need to optimize the time and really prioritize where you're going to focus your efforts to have the maximum outcome on your app. One of the things you touched on as you were going through that was this idea of privacy for users, and I know that we're all excited about the promise of using agentic systems and AI but as engineers and technical folk, we should also be a bit skeptical about how data is being utilized. Can you touch on how Luciq and your team is building agentic systems, but that they're built for developers and in a way that they can actually trust how their data is being utilized and used?
Yeah, 100%. And I totally agree that I think uh, in some cases we are not careful enough as an industry in what we're providing to LLMs. And not that the LLMs are training on data, but we should be more circumspect about ensuring that data that our users entrust in us or data that tells us about who our users are, we're not leaking outside of our organizations. So we approach this from kind of three core principles. Um, the first is transparency, and this is whether you're using AI or not. Uh, at Lucic, as a mobile SDK that's in tens of billions of devices on a daily basis, we have gone to great pains to make sure that we give developers tools so that they're not sending us PII information about their users. So we have all sorts of auto masking and over and under masking tools on both the screenshots if you choose to collect screenshots. Sometimes even like payloads in screen names can contain sensitive information. Certainly network logs. We give you all the tools that you would need to make sure you're obfuscating and not even obfuscating, not sending to us. So this all happens on device. Any information that is personally identifiable for your users. And the reality is in almost all cases, you don't want that and you don't need that for any sort of debugging. We like I said, we're on billions of devices. We never have customers ask for us to provide more identifying information. You can identify the user for your backend systems, but not giving us anything that would identify them. Um, so that's principle number one, that we give you the ability to uh, obfuscate and not prevent us from seeing any personally identifiable information that you would be worried about sending somewhere else. I think the second question is really about then, well, LLMs, it's not just about the data that they have access to, it's also the actions that they take. I don't want to trust an LLM to, um, you know, push code directly to my main branch on my mobile app. Totally makes sense. Um,
Right.
one of our second principle is really a bring your own agent principle. So we work well with whatever agent you might bring, whether that's like a Cursor, Copilot, Codex, or Claude. Like it doesn't matter. We work with all of them primarily through standard interfaces like MCP, R evolving, CLI. And we also have experience in our dashboard where you can, without directly connecting us to an LLM provider through an MCP or CLI, you can copy the payload of all the relevant information and directly dump that into your LLM. So that is a principle of ours. We understand that most organizations have governance and control over the internal use of those models through those providers. And one of the easiest ways for us to make sure that we're in line is to not add our own model or our own experience, but instead meet developers where they are in their existing tools. The last principle is definitely about control. So we believe that humans need to be in the loop. And so any action that we can take or that you have granted Lucic to take, for example, an action like um, uh, pushing a PR for a proposed fix to a crash or a bug as a experience you can do within the Lucic product. But obviously those go through a approve and deploy experience. The same is true for when we catch phased rollouts. So when you're rolling out through the store, we can watch that and observe whether or not we should be pausing that rollout
Mm.
or approving that rollout. Those go through gated experiences if you want to configure them that way. I think this is pretty common amongst organizations, and there are evolving kind of governance models for
Sure.
AI actions. And I think the human in the loop one, particularly when it comes to anything that touches production, is pretty critical. The other one that I think is maybe interesting is that we do have an ability to automatically capture issues. And by that I mean we can watch, it's typically in like a pre-production environment, uh, users' interactions with your app and spot things that a typical developer testing their app wouldn't spot. We call them UI issues or broken functionality, signs of frustration or minor paper cuts that I was describing earlier that it probably aren't even worth the time to file a bug report, um, we do have controls about how verbose that can be because obviously it can generate more issues than you have the bandwidth to then go fix. So we try to tailor that to make sure that it is actionable, not just noise.
Yeah. I mean, we've touched on uh, context pretty deeply, and you also touched on like the principles of how we build out these agentic systems. It sounds like both context and having an engineer or developer in the loop is key, even as you're bringing your own agents and LLMs into the fold. I'd like to really dig a little bit deeper on your vision and Luciq's vision. I know that we're focused on getting to a place where we're reducing the amount of time that mobile engineers and developers are spending on maintaining the reliability of their mobile app and more focused on building new experiences or bringing new features to delight their customers. Can you talk a little bit about where the world is leading in terms of reducing the mobile engineering time spent on app maintenance?
Yeah, I think this is the part that gets me most excited as a former developer. Nobody likes the very few people. I know we've all have some people who like the like deep digging and diagnosis and root cause triaging of complex issues.
I've I've spoken to a couple people like that.
Yeah,
There's a few of them. Yeah.
the detectives of the world who really enjoy the hunt for why did this happen. Yeah, we all know them, and I think I'm not going to disparage them. It's a really important skill set, particularly as the types of issues that we're experiencing become multifaceted. Um, and I mean that because in today's world, uh, many of you as mobile developers are probably starting to experiment with generative UI inside of your app. So you don't necessarily even know what your user experienced. Sometimes it was generated on the fly. It's not a deterministic experience that you shipped once and is static. And so the digging becomes more and more important. And I think we definitely hope to provide tools to those detectives. But for those who aren't in that realm, which I'll include myself on, we love delivering great experiences, innovative experiences, things that users haven't had before, things that delight our users. And, we should, as engineers and developers, really get to focus on that. And the thing that I'm excited about is I do think the future world is one where we have a lot more forward velocity on new experiences and great experiences. And frankly, many apps are going to be competing on the quality of their experience rather than just on the maintenance tasks. And so I think the tools that exist today are already showcasing that we can significantly reduce the what in many mobile organizations is 60+% spent on maintenance. And by maintenance, I mean sometimes it's operating system upgrades, sometimes it's uh, migrating to new UI frameworks, but a lot of that is just quality issues and fixing quality issues within the app. If we could unburden that, we have a lot more forward velocity, and that's what I'm really excited about. So as a organization and a product, we are really focused on meeting developers where they are. There's an evolving development cycle for mobile developers that involves, working in IDE or terminal with an LLM to produce uh, improvements to the app, to experiment with new designs and experiences that you can deliver. Um, and so we're meeting users there. Uh, the other part is what I talked about earlier, which is this combination of all of the data sources that matter to how should I take a next step on my app? What should I prioritize next in my app? They're starting to blend together. 10 years ago, there were crash reporting tools and APM tools and bug reporting tools. We're slowly building those into one quality system. Today, we still have a lot of separation between things like feature flag management, server-driven UI, quality tools, and product analytics. When really those are all kind of like the operating system for your app in production, right? It's how are you responding to the experience of your users in your app and then delivering improvements as a result. The future for Luciq is headed in that direction. We're going to be continuing to expand the types of information that we collect, the place where we provide that to mobile developers, and the expertise that we provide in enabling you to take action, whether that's deciding what's the right issue to work on, having a starting point for resolving it, automatically rolling out or rolling back new features or capabilities based on a feature flag, or on the fly adjusting the UI from users from server-driven UI. That's where we're headed. I believe that this experience for mobile developers shouldn't be a collection of tools that they have to stitch together and then take a whole bunch of time to triage and then do the debugging and reproduction steps. It should be a lot smoother, and it should be an enabler so that the team can really focus on the what's next of the great experience for users.
Great. That that makes a lot of sense. And I love just the way that things are evolving so quickly, and how we're keeping up with the cutting edge of how mobile developers work, and really giving them the options to work in the way that they like to work, and to stitch those things together. I think we do have a few more minutes for questions, so we'll open it up to the audience, and see if there are any questions coming in. Let's give it a moment to open up the floor here and see if we have any questions coming in. Cool. I see there's a question digging a little bit more into context. You talked about context helping to prioritize bugs, and you also landed on kind of those frustrating moments where we might be able to fix something agentically versus kind of digging in and doing more manual intervention. Can you speak a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah. Yeah, so the context for us when prioritizing bugs is really around a set of flows that users define as critical flows. So we help prioritize bugs if they're occurring more frequently and if they're occurring in critical parts of your apps. So that's one of the first moments. I'm not sure if the questioner meant bugs in general. When we say bugs, we mean like a user-reported bug. But also when it comes to issues, we have a very what I think is innovative way of prioritizing issues across your app. So that could be a bug, a crash, a performance problem, a UI issue. And we do that by something we call frustration-free sessions. So by being this full context SDK that's collecting all of the moments across a user's experience, we can categorize not just like did a user experience something, but what was the overall kind of color of a user's session on your app? And we use the app text model of categorizing it as satisfying, tolerable, frustrating, or crashing. We can then go back and say, well, what was the contribution to that frustration from each individual issue? So if so we can look at for an individual issue, let's say it's a slow screen load, how many users and how frequently and what is the weight of that compared to all the other issues to give you a frustration-free impact score. The frustration-free sessions is a kind of top level, how is my app's health doing? But we then use the way that we calculate that to break down for each individual issue, what's the frustration-free impact? So if I solve that issue, how will I move my frustration-free sessions score? This really unlocks for teams an ability to prioritize across different types of issues, the qualitative, quantitative, technical, and non-technical that I was describing. And on top of that, it's designed in such a way that you can assign it to a specific part of an app. So like many of the people on this call, you probably have an app where you have responsibility for that app assigned to different teams. So one team might own a checkout flow, and another team might own user management or some kind of dashboard experience for users. Um, we can, by the way we calculate frustration-free sessions, also assign a frustration-free session score per team based on what part of the app they're owned. This is really helpful because I think previous to this, apps are monolithic code bases. There's no microservice. It's really hard to get a signal for how are we doing as an individual team who has partial responsibility of the whole of this app. So that is a really important way in which we use the context that we're collecting to help you prioritize issues across your app. And we do that automatically. It's not many engineers I've talked to in the past have told me, oh, this replaces tens of spreadsheets and hours of time per week analyzing what are the most impactful issues. We do this automatically as we learn more about your app.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that. Kenny, before we wrap up, we talked a little bit about today about the action gap. We talked about context and trust, and you shared your vision on where all of this was heading. Before we wrap up, if you could just leave the developers and mobile leads in this room with one mindset shift that you think they should make today, what would that be?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Daniel. I'm excited that we got to host this, and I'm always happy to be in any room full of mobile developers. They're my favorite kind of developers. Um, Yeah, I think probably the one thing I would say to leave with is I think like I mentioned, there's a mindset shift. We've accepted two things. One, we've accepted that we can and should be slow. And so put it on the put it on the backlog for maybe the next release. We should no longer accept that. We have to make sure that as engineering teams, we're building tools so we can respond rapidly. And when we have those tools, then we have to ask ourselves, does it need a human to respond? So we should start thinking about how are we architecting a system around our app that's watching users' experience, spotting issues, and at a minimum proposing fixes that then we as humans need to review and decide whether to push forward. But I think we've also accepted that in mobile, because of the nature of the diverse set of software that it runs on, we're always going to be experiencing edge cases and issues.
Sure.
And that they will be slow and that we just have to deal with that slog. And I think the mindset shift needs to be, it doesn't have to be slow and it doesn't have to be humans that deal with that slog. We do have to deal with it because mobile quality and the bar for mobile quality from our users is ever increasing. But it doesn't have to be humans who are the ones who are handling every single component of that.
That that's great. And it doesn't have to be humans, and there's so many other things that they could be focused on in terms of building that feature functionality to delight their customers and users and what comes next. There's so many things beyond just keeping the app reliable and performant. And like you said, it doesn't have to be humans that do the work, but it's great to have them to have the context in the loop so that they can understand what's going on.
Yeah. And
Uh,
on that last point, I do want to say, uh, I briefly mentioned generative UI. Um,
sure,
I do think that we have yet to see like the first truly generative UI app. And by that, I mean it's like very dynamic in the experience that you're delivering to users. You can imagine like a future messaging app that instead of showing me the text of the message that I got, it's also creating a very complex visual for me to interact with.
sure.
We haven't seen those yet, and I would challenge everyone on this call who's a mobile developer, like lean into that because there is a lot of innovation available now that these Gen UI experiences are or playgrounds are allowed by the operating systems. And I really think that we're going to move into this era of very dynamic, very delightful user experiences. And the winners of the next wave of mobile apps are going to be the ones who really lean into making that happen.